Howdy. I don't know about you, but I could use something uplifting. Let's talk Disney. In fact, let's look over specifically the last 3 years of animated Disney movies. This time, I'd like to try a different style of top list. We'll start with the animated Disney movies I personally enjoyed the least. Then we'll finish on my absolute favorite. But obviously, all of them have incredible merit. I mean, it's modern animated Disney. They have like a $200 million budget each. Each one of them has helped carve the future of modern animation itself. Nowadays, these are some of the most expensive and complicated productions in the world. So, take this list with a pinch of salt. Although I'm saying worst, in this case it does mean not quite as good as the one after it. So let's check out what I consider the top 6 worst to best modern animated Disney movies. We'll be looking between the dates 2016 to 2019. And yeah, let's include Disney Pixar in this list too. Anyway, let's dive in. Onto the countdown.
What can I say except you're welcome for the tides, the sun, the sky.
Ralph Breaks the Internet. Ralph and Vanellope are back, and in many ways I can appreciate this sequel. I like these two, but many parts left me with very mixed feelings. From weird character turns to cynical commentaries on the internet at large. When I first heard about Ralph and Vanellope entering the internet, I rolled my eyes. For me, Disney is all about visiting a world away from my world, and taking some of that positivity and energy back into my own reality. And well, internet clickbait, emotionally polarizing articles, superficial hype, and social media don't make me excited. They just kind of exhaust me. But I thought, hey, if it's Disney, maybe there's more to it than cynical internet parodies. And, well, there's a little. But as I feared, the internet portion of this movie has a very superficial, cynical edge to it. Like Ralph doing stupid faces to make revoltingly large amounts of money on BuzzTube. Like, that's not funny, that's the YouTube homepage. Why did they call it BuzzTube anyway? Earlier, they very clearly product placed every internet site on the planet, including YouTube. So why change it to BuzzTube halfway through? The other problem I had was in the third act, where Ralph loses a lot of his likability. He essentially becomes the villain of the movie, sabotaging Vanellope's new home with an apocalyptic virus because he didn't want to lose her. But more on that later. As soon as we hit the internet, we're bombarded by a sea of intercompany crossover branding, marketable pop culture references, corporate synergy, and trendy jokes. And sadly, none of it made me laugh. Perhaps I'm the wrong audience, because a lot of these internet parodies just make me feel sad. There's a somewhat important plot about Ralph and Vanellope buying a steering wheel off eBay to get Vanellope's arcade box back, but most of it just feels like an excuse to get a string of internet culture jokes. Though fortunately, the heart of the movie still seems to be the connection between Ralph and Vanellope, similar to the original. And that human warmth added some welcome relief for me from the superficial internet gags. We even get to meet the YouTube algorithm, my best friend and my worst enemy. We finally meet. And apparently the algorithm is very critical about what it recommends to viewers? Since when?
No. Uninspired. Cliched. Oh, YouTube's got this one.
No, give them the Star Wars conspiracy theories and screaming vloggers instead. Anyway, it's not that these internet culture jokes are wrong, I just think they're kinda sad. The other problem is we get a fairly ugly side of Ralph when he essentially becomes the villain in the third act, because he's afraid of losing Vanellope to her new home, the slaughter race world. He puts a mass-spreading virus in a new home, essentially destroying it.
Vanellope, please!
A friend would never do what you did, never!
It just seemed very out of character for Ralph, though it does lead to a nice epilogue with a good message on loss and sacrifice. And like a lot of people, I really did enjoy the princess portion. It's a cute self-aware nod, and they basically save the final act. Ironically, my favorite parts of Ralph Breaks the Internet tended to be when they were far away from the internet. I more enjoyed just watching Ralph and Vanellope spend time together, because it's their characters that carry this movie. For me, Ralph Breaks the Internet was a combination of eye rolls with a few very earnest moments in between. It's not among my favorites, but it does stand shakily on its own 2 feet.
There's no need to pray, it's okay, you're welcome. Ha! I guess it's just my way of being me.
Cars 3. You might already know I'm not a big fan of this series, but looking as objectively as possible, I did think Cars 3 offered something decent.
You know, they told him when he was done. He didn't decide.
Although I found the whole thing pretty forgettable, I will say this is my favorite of the three Cars movies. This was marketed as a more harsh sequel to Cars, where Lightning McQueen can't race anymore after a near fatal crash on the tracks. So he has to decide between retiring or taking one more shot at racing. Sounding familiar?
Is he ready to start training?
Yes, Mater, I am. I decide when I'm done.
And similarly to Rocky IV, there is this thematic argument against technology going on.
It looks old and broken down.
Hey!
With flabby tires.
I do not.
Use that!
Whoa!
And the two narratives do crash a bit, so to speak, though I do appreciate the food for thought and story. And fortunately, I liked Rocky IV, so I don't mind them retreading this story. This time, Lightning's not struggling with self-confidence or criminal gangs, but simply old age. We also meet his new young rival, Jackson Storm, who trains on high-tech simulators to break speed records. And I think there's a more graceful pace to this sequel of Cars, often giving us a few moments of Lightning just reflecting on his current state of affairs. And there's a surprisingly mature narrative of hard work not always paying off, and sometimes having to compromise our goals, or just retiring gracefully, which is probably a pretty odd narrative to its preteen audience. But hey, at least it gave something for the adults to think about. So why do we have to code it all in this Cars kids theme movie? When there's all these mature themes under the surface, it feels even more jarringly contrived, artificial, and unnecessary than ever. Particularly after Inside Out's brutal sincerity. And kids liked that movie just fine, it's one of their favorites. And that's the problem here. Among the poignant themes of self-delusion, compromise, and friendship, none of it gets by the fact it's a kids' movie about cars. It's almost like they should have just gone for an Inside Out 2 instead of Cars 3. 3 of these things. Moving on.
What can I say except you're welcome for the tides, the sun, the sky.
Moana. On paper, I feel like Moana should be among my favorite Disney movies. The tropical island setting alone is among my favorite in all of entertainment. And the idea of a demigod for a companion seems really different for Disney, except maybe for the genie from Aladdin. Plus, I like that their adventure is an actual sailing adventure in the Pacific Islands setting. How different is that? And jeebus do they make this lush animation pop. The ocean, the beaches, the characters, they all just shine off the screen. Moana's a classic purely for the visual spectacle alone. But the problem I had was, for all these creative setups and varied cultural narratives, they all end up being fed into the very well-honed Disney narrative machine. For example, the beginning of the movie is probably my biggest nitpick. The story starts off with a lot of hints of Disney cliché. The dad's the typical oppressive authority figure and the daughter longs for adventure. Like, why is it in Disney films, if the parents aren't killed off completely, they're constantly trying to hold their kids back from the great outside? But once Moana gets out in the ocean, things really start to pick up. As you probably know, she's on the search for Maui, as he's stolen the heart of the island. And Maui and Moana together are definitely among the most memorable parts of this movie for me. It's almost worth it for all the cliches to be put in place just to put these two together. And who doesn't get a smile out of You're Welcome, or at least a meme?
Hey, well anyway, let me say you're welcome.
When people respond to me with this meme on Twitter, I always get a smile because I remember this song. And that's the thing, like most modern Disney movies, Moana still feels inspiring and magical to me. But like others have mentioned, it really does feel like that Disney checklist is there. She's technically a princess trying to escape her oppressive authority figure, and she's off on a quest to save her people and has a comedic animal sidekick along the way. I am of course referring to that chicken. Maui even lampshades this fact.
If you wear a dress and you have an animal sidekick, you're a princess.
I also don't get much of a kick from the chosen one destiny narrative. I just find the idea of destiny such an unrealistic, boring concept. Like, I'd actually find Moana's quest more admirable if the ocean gods weren't guiding her. But that being said, the casting for Moana's characters is among some of the best casting I've ever seen in Disney. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Maui brings that perfect demigod bravado to the role. And Miss Krahalo, how do I pronounce your name?
Ow, like you stub your toe. Lee, like Bruce Lee, and then you add another E. So it's Ow Lee E.
Oh, gotcha, yeah. Owly E and Dwayne have a real friendly chemistry, and it really shows in the film.
This mission is cursed.
It's not cursed.
Shark head.
Now, I realize saying Disney animation is beautiful is like saying a rainbow is colorful, but even in my 6 years of reviewing animation, some of these moments just made my jaw drop. Overall, despite some generic setups here and there, I believe the best parts of Moana are its two main characters, and its simply stunning environmental animation. Absolutely gorgeous.
You're welcome for the wonderful world you know.
Frozen 2. Jeepers, this is dazzling. Confusing, but very dazzling. Frozen 2 is a movie where I really wanted to be invested. The original Frozen is among my favorite Disney movies, and I've been looking forward to this sequel for years. Yet when I was in the cinema seat, I could barely keep up with the story. I couldn't even keep up with the songs. Now don't get me wrong, these songs are still emotional, powerful, intense, and fantastical to see. But the lyrics and tone often felt very jumbled to me. I'm not used to reviewing songs, so pardon me if my wording is clumsy on this. But Frozen 2 has songs that will jump 100 feet up in tone, then down in an instant, with no real consistent chorus that I could follow. And how are kids meant to remember these lyrics? They're so complicated.
Sorry, secret siren, but I'm blocking out your calls.
While I could quite easily whistle Let It Go or Love is an Open Door, I feel like I'd pass out trying to whistle half these songs. But I do think there's ways this definitely improves upon the original Frozen. In the original, I never felt like there was quite enough time to see that important sister bond between Elsa and Anna. The few scenes we got seemed sparse, jumping from childhood to
Chocolate.
to conflict to ice heart to true love breaking the spell. It often felt a bit lacking to me. But here, Elsa and Anna actually spend a good portion of the movie together. They get a lot more time to simply be sisters, be siblings, and just work off each other. But probably the biggest downside was Kristoff, who was given literally nothing to do, apart from getting constantly awkward, uncomfortable scenes of him trying to propose to Anna at the most inappropriate times possible. In fact, midway through the movie, Kristoff just vanishes from the story, and it's done in a kind of abrupt, nasty way, where Anna, fueled by her fear of losing Elsa, essentially just ditches Kristoff completely, assuming he just left. It seems kind of half-baked in terms of execution and weirdly out of character for Anna. Like, just ditching your boyfriend in an unknown magical forest where you may never see him again? It's not like they have smartphones, so this could have been the last time they ever saw each other. By comparison, Olaf actually has way more story significance and character development than Kristoff. In fact, our snow buddy's essentially going through his own little existential dread phase, and they make this sometimes challenging phase surprisingly charming for him. And really, I guess it makes sense for him to go through it now. He's been near death multiple times and is constantly facing a hostile universe that is always just seconds away from melting him. I've seen some reviewers tear a laugh apart in this movie, but for me, he was a welcome addition. I mean, weirdly enough, his scenes were about the only part I could actually keep up with the movie's story.
Do you ever worry about the notion that nothing is permanent?
No.
Really?
While Show Yourself was probably my favorite song, The Next Right Thing has a message said so gracefully by Disney, and it's a very important message to hear. And that's the thing, so much of Frozen 2 had me thrilled and enjoying it in the moment. But a week after seeing it, I couldn't explain the story to you for the life of me.
Into the unknown.
You're welcome for the wonderful world you know.
Incredibles 2. It's hard not to appreciate what a dang spectacle both the Incredibles movies are. And in this case, I actually like the sequel better than the original. While the initial setup of a hero family has never really caught my attention much, the Simpson-esque comedy, with the fiery, fantastical action scenes, and the very down-to-earth characters always immerse me back in the story. To keep the story simple, the Incredibles family is trying to make a comeback by going under the law with a billionaire to legalize superheroes again. Bob stays at home to keep the family running well, and Helen goes off to do the superhero work. While probably Pixar's most dangerous villain causes mass chaos in the city.
Screenslaver. Every meaningful experience must be packaged and delivered to you to watch at a distance, so that you can remain ever sheltered.
What I like about the Incredibles movies is it's never the typical home life is boring and annoying compared to the outside cliche, like you'd see in a bad 90s sitcom. No, everyone in the family actually cares about each other, and it's always clear that it's a team effort from everyone, both to keep everyone in the family okay and to make ends meet. And the focus is on all the family this time, not just the adults. It's a slice of life story while being a thrilling superhero action simultaneously. and I'm invested in all of the family's story. I want to see Violet get back with her crush. I even want to see Dash get his math done.
They want us to do it this
I don't know that way. Why would they change math? Math is math.
okay,
Math
Dad.
is math.
It's like a really good Simpsons episode. It's understandably cynical about society, but it's not cynical about human connection, and I appreciate that. And Jeebus, this villain. Screenslaver is dark. I see this weird shift of priorities. Common Sense Media has the parents complaining about the use of the word hell and stupid. But how could they possibly overlook how terrifying it must be to a child, seeing their heroes having their minds violated, instantly becoming mindless robots via Screenslaver, and attacking their own children? Particularly by the final act, it feels like no one's safe. Speaking of which, did I mention these action scenes are among the best Disney or Pixar have ever done? Some of the uses of the superpowers are so creative. And by the third act, I was at the edge of my seat, worried about the family and Lucius's safety. They do come to their senses in the end, but there's something about when every single hero could be instantly turned into a completely controlled slave that just makes my skin crawl. I think the message they were trying to give to the kids here is we should be wary of how screens can influence us. And honestly, with the amount of heads I constantly see in smartphones nowadays, I think that's a more important message than ever. Probably my favorite scene in the movie is where Elastigirl is tracking down Screenslaver's signal. All the while, Screenslaver is giving this cryptic speech on anti-consumerism. The only better scene is when Violet goes for the ice cream.
Right?
Oh, yes? Good. All fine and good.
Overall, Incredibles 2 is fiercely polished in writing. Just like the original, it has very likable characters and astonishing action set pieces. Personally, I enjoyed Incredibles 2 even more than the original. And before we get to number 1, let's go through some quick honorable mentions. Finding Dory. Why is Ellen voicing a fish with a learning disability? Next she'll tell me Oprah was in Princess and the Frog. She was. Anyway, props to Ellen though, because she does really sell the role. What I found interesting here is that Finding Dory is far more about managing anxiety than it is facing some big evil villain. And Dory's struggles to manage her own mental state felt completely relatable when I was watching. But you know, she keeps on swimming. I can respect that. Coco. Looking back, what I appreciate most about Coco is how foreign and different it all felt to me. But as Miguel descends into the land of the dead, I honestly never had any idea what to expect next. On Moana, I could take an educated guess on what direction we were generally heading most moments. But so much of Coco challenged my expectations. I also really liked Hector as a sidekick, just casually traveling along with his great-great-grandson. It really shows off Pixar's talents that they can turn the land of the dead into such a colorful, spirited environment. Toy Story 4. I talked about this one previously in Worst and Best 2019 Animated, so I'll keep it brief and try to cover some new points. Toy Story 4 doesn't feel like the most necessary sequel in the world, particularly after the very solid ending of 3. But we do get some unanswered questions like what happened to Bo Peep. To be honest, Forky's fine, but the I'm trash joke got pretty old to me very quickly. And I found the most amusing part of the villain her henchmen. Seriously, I want to hire these guys. Probably the two main things that justified Toy Story 4 for me was the very beginning and the very ending. To me, this actually didn't say anything too poignant about finding personal justification in existence. But you know what? It did let me see these two characters I care about come back together, and I appreciate that. Anyway, on to number 1.
Hey! Well, anyway, let me say you're welcome.
I won't give up, no, I won't give in till I reach the end.
Honestly, I just haven't seen a modern Disney movie I personally find as inspiring, thoughtful, and universally meaningful as Zootopia. Though I admit, Zootopia is still a flawed gem. But still, even with its flaws, this feels like nothing I've ever seen from Disney before. There's a visually stunning new city or place or commentary or animal at every turn. This is another case where I had no idea what was going to happen next in the story. And these are characters I could never forget, even if I'd only seen it one time. Like Futurama, part of the intrigue here is seeing how Zootopia's residents are represented. What clever way do they show an analogy or reflection of our own technological world? How do they relax? What beverage does a giraffe drink? How do the widely different animals in all shapes and sizes get along in this bustling city? And even though I don't find Judy and Nick's mystery that that interesting. I still liked Judy and the bustling, vibrant world constantly exploding around her so much that I didn't even care. In some ways, this modern Disney movie is more aimed at adults. There's more talking and more deduction going on, and I like that because it gives time for the drama to set in on characters. When Judy has a quiet, lonely moment, I legitimately feel it along with her. When she feels exhausted and like giving up, I totally understand. When she becomes disillusioned at what she's become, I understand that too.
We cannot let fear divide us. Please give me back the Zootopia I love.
And that's a message we don't often get from Disney, that we can become what we fought against. And what I appreciate is that Judy is never being guided by some predetermined destiny. All the way from her childhood, she fights tooth and nail to be the person she wanted to be, and nothing is going to stand in her way. And it makes her an even more fleshed out, interesting character to me. And her fight shows rather than tells when a person might unconsciously judge a person based on their race, or in this case, what animal they are. And we see some of these challenges she faces because of prejudice.
I want you to remember this moment.
Well, he was right about one thing. I don't know when to quit.
And I feel like Zootopia had the potential to be even more. You can tell there was so much more potential just from seeing the deleted scenes alone. What if Nick had created Wild Times, the theme park? What if a shock collar was still attached to every predator? What a great dark edge that would give to the movie. But even without these extra story elements, Zootopia gave us a vibrant, original world like nothing we'd ever seen from Disney. And we may never see anything like this from Disney again, till maybe Zootopia 2. Zootopia is one of those Disney movies I think will be remembered for a long time. Personally, Zootopia is my favorite post-2016 Disney movie. Well, thanks for checking out these modern animated Disney movies with me. If you've got your own order you'd put them in, feel free to leave your own thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.